you go, yeah, it actually is connected, you can do that. That's a long way. And they kept breaking down, these little VW, little cars, and it was so frustrating. And one day George was standing, and he thought, what if we put the books on a ship? We send the ship there. So we started sending the ship there, and after a couple of times that happened, the ship had broken down. They're like, now what do? We got to pay for the ship. So they opened the ship. They said, come on, books for sale. People came by the thousands, and that began the ship ministry. Going through, I think Nikki said 150 ports, no, 450 ports the ship has been in around the world. And so people come by the tens of thousands. This was our very first ship, but then there were 4 more ships after that. The very first ship, 1970, was a logos. You see it's tipping on its side, top left there. It ran aground off the coast of South America. No loss of life, but we lost the ship. But God had a bigger plan because in the same year, He gave us a bigger ship, a better ship. And in that time, we had acquired the Doulos, which was a second ship. So after about the 1980s, we started sailing 2 ships. It was always pretty much in 2 hemispheres around the world. For those of you that like numbers and all that stuff, there's the numbers. Look at how many nautical miles and how many millions of visitors. The Logos Hope here, we've already had 3.6 million visitors since we sailed. And the 57,000 nautical miles is going around the earth 2.5 times. That's a lot of sailing around the world. It's really quite interesting. We have about 430 on board, 400 crew members on board. We're about 59 nationalities. It's amazing. Everyone has a job. They either work in the book fair, they work in the galley or the pantry, they might work on the deck crew, keeping the boat, doing the lifeboats, then they work in the engine room. Everyone has a job on board, and they all work 6 days a week. All right? We're not 5 days a week, we're 6 days a week. But on day 6, they actually get to go on the shore and do what we call a sea day, a challenge day. So everyone gets to have a ministry day as well. I think the ship ministry is best explained through a little video I'm going to show you. It's only about 15 seconds. You got to listen to it. We get a lot of new crew members on board. We come on, we pat them on the shoulder, we train them, and off we go to the next. And the leaders, us leaders, don't have a lot of time to train. And because we have different accents and so forth, things go wrong. Let's see if we can get there.
Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Wissenschafters. Das wird das Überlebensradar.
video of get a sense of what it is to be on the ship and crew members and so forth. So, number one, the word we use to bring hope, the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what we're doing. Number two, we bring help. We have opportunity to go on shore and do compassion ministries, what we would call. And in each country, it's a little bit different. In this country, we were taking water buckets with filters on them. Because people don't have filtered drinking water. And I was seeing this little picture, the story is told, I wasn't there. But it's a little girl, you see the darker colored water in this hand and the clear water in her other hand. To actually drink clear water is very unique. And I'm told this little girl said, I'm not going to drink this water. She wouldn't drink the clear water. She said, sir, you have to drink the water first, one of our crew members. She thought something might have been wrong with it. So we had to drink that glass of water before she would. But imagine just bringing clear, filtered water to villages and orphanages and so forth, churches even. These buckets, I forget, they can do 250 gallons of water days. You just fill it up, and the filters last for 10 years. They're like, I don't know, $75 or something, I forget, but it's just a very minimal amount that actually change the village. The other, of course, is the books, bringing knowledge, help, and hope. Knowledge is the books. We have 5,000 titles of books on board, about 500,000 books inventory. People come for the books. They love children's books. Many of these countries, you can't get English books. They can get books in their own language, but they can't get it in English. And many people around the world want to learn English. That's what, it's a big deal, it really is. So to get English books is beautiful, and of course, to get Bibles is even better in Christian literature. One of my favorite stories, another one, simple but profound. An older gentleman walked on the ship one day and was standing right near where this picture was taken, and you can tell this man he'd been walking somewhere for a while. And I said, welcome aboard. I said, where have you come from? You look like you've been on the road. He says, I haven't. I live up in the mountains. It took me 4 days walking to get here. He says, I heard the ship was coming. I said, how can I help you? He says, I pastor 7 churches up in the mountains. And he pulled out of his pocket a New Testament. He says, I've come to get my first Bible. He didn't have a Bible. He only had a New Testament. I thought, you know how you swallow and go, let's see, I have about 5 Bibles in my cabin, and I have a bunch more back home. And this man pastoring never had a full Bible. Amazing. So those are just little stories of what, as Nikki said, we're called the bookshelf. It's so people come by tens of thousands to be on the bookshelf. And these are some of the pictures of some of the lines of people that come. It's really quite amazing. And they come into a little welcome area, and then they move into they walk past the history wall and into a kind of like a lifeboat. So we have like a lifeboat thing. They go into the book fair, and after the book fair, they can pick up all different kinds of books. So we do this little checkout line there. And then they walk through what we call the journey of life. This is like a walk-through Bible story of the prodigal son. It's a story that all religions actually understand. In fact, the word prodigal is only used and thought of that story in the Bible. If you think of it, you don't say I have a prodigal car. I have a brother, my watch is where he's prodigal. Prodigal actually goes back to the biblical story of the prodigal son. We physically walk people through this story to share the gospel of love and reconciliation and all that, forgiveness. It's beautiful. I put this picture in there only because I also had a chance to meet Madam Shirley Johnson. She's the first freely elected head of state president of any country in Africa. She's the president of Liberia, and she still is. And we need to pray for her. She loved Jesus. She loved Jesus, and right now she's got her hands full with Ebola. Really, it is a huge problem. We can pray for Madam Shirley Johnson. She came on board. She was our guest of honor in Liberia, and then we were taking her through the journey of life. And it really is a great little story well, you know the story. Actually, you don't have to explain that. Then we go to the International Cafe. Then we have a little coffee and ice cream, whatever. We have a captain's log. You can sign a little computer and send a message to the captain. You should see some of those messages that come through to our captain. It's really easy, really beautiful. And we connect, and then down on deck 3, we have a 420-seat theater. We do all kinds of activities down there. We have conferences. We have concerts, we have marriage counseling, we have all types of things that happen. We have another lounge where we do special events and so forth. So it really is a very busy ship. Here you see crew members in their national costume. That's what they wear. They bring it with them, and we have a special event. I have one little video I want to show you now. It's probably the favorite. And all it is, it's just very simple. It's a guy with a camera walking down a line of people. And there's two countries. There's going to be Jamaica and there's going to be Nicaragua. And he's just walking down the line with the camera to give you an idea of what a busy day on the ship would be. This is not our longest line, just you know. Our longest line is 18,000 people. This line they figure is about 12 to 13,000 people. But here's what a line of 12,000 people look like, A, and B. I'd like you to just kind of think which country you're going to choose to be the longest line. Is it Nicaragua or is it Jamaica? Pick one out. We'll have a little competition, all right? Here we go. Nicaragua on the left, Jamaica on the right. People stand for hours and hours and hours in the hot sun to come on the ship. Now this is not Hollywood edited. I thought it was. I watched it a couple times. They're faking us out. They weren't. This is the real thing. The line keeps going. So what's it going to be? Jamaica on the right, Nicaragua on the left. Who said Jamaica? Who said Nicaragua? All right, let's see. That is the wrong line. If you notice, the line on the left is going much faster. We had to actually speed that up. All right, the remaining one is Nicaragua. We're not going to see half the line. The line continues in Nicaragua. Question, how long have you waited when you go on the ship? Are you kidding? This is way worse than Disney, bro. So we go out of the port, and guess what? The line starts again, outside the port. That's the one line. I was on the ship when we hit our first record, 16,000, and then this past year we hit 18,000 something. That's a lot of people coming to that ship. It's amazing. And honestly, it's not real comfortable. We like the 5,000 to 10,000 days. We actually can spend more time with the people that come and so forth. But when you get over 10,000, it's just like it gets a little bit crazy. But anyway, you can't read that from there. But this is a bit of our. I just put our schedule up there. You can see we're in Hong Kong, and then we're in 2 ports in Japan, Nagasaki and Kanazawa. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ports in South Korea. We're there today in Seoul. We'll sail on Tuesday to Taiwan. And then you'll see we're in 2 ports in Taiwan until the end of September, and then off to Singapore for a dry dock. So it gives you an idea of where the ship is, how many ports it's in, and where it's going. So that's just a bit of the schedule. And of course, for us, we want everyone to leave that ship with a piece of literature. Not everyone can afford a book. Not everyone can afford a book, but they're all going to get a piece. They're going to get a New Testament. They're going to get some kind of the Gospel of John, or they're going to get the kids get what we call the most important story ever told, Gospel story. So every child gets something as well. So that's what the ship ministry is about. I want to honor your time. So in the next 8.5 minutes, don't hold me to that, but I'm going to try in the next few minutes. I want to touch base with you on just something to help us understand the global initiative, what's happening in the world of mission today. All right? I'm going to go through this very quick. I'm sorry, I do want to honor your time, but stick up with me a little bit here. This session, which we talked about formation. And what people do is leaders, Christian leaders meet around the world every 4 years, and it's called the Lausanne Conference. And this year, it was last year, end of last year, they met down in South Africa. They came up with the 10 global trends for 2014. And I think sometimes we miss these trends. We get so busy in our world and in our church that we don't realize what's happening in the world around us. So I think this will help us all understand what's happening in the world today. And when you look at these, you're going to go, I know that, I know that, I know that. You're going to know that. So this is probably more as a confirmation of what you already know. But we talk about the currents of change that are sweeping the world, imperative to understand our role, and the driving force in the movement of the proclamation of the gospel. Number one, prominence of the Global South Church. That may be a new term to you, Global South, but really what it is Christianity is exploding in the Global South. We used to talk about the 10-40 window. That was a degree of 10 degrees to 40 degrees. It's a 10-40 window. That's for a lot of the unbelievers. People have never heard the gospel in that piece. But as we move into those parts of the world, as missions moves in, it's now more the global South Church is becoming prominent. I was in Brazil last year. I was in 5 or 6 cities. I found out that, you know what? Brazilians are well received in Muslim countries. They have a bond in the Muslim, it's very unique. Muslim countries are very happy to have Brazilians in their countries. So what are the Brazilians doing? They're sending believers into the Muslim countries. From the United States, it's a lot more difficult to do that. And so that's just one country that's making a difference by going into the Muslim world. So number one, the gospel is flourishing. Number two, indigenous people are taking responsibility. For many countries of the world, we from the West, Europe and America, Canada, we've been sending our missionaries to these countries for many, many years, for decades, for a century. But what's happening now is changing. The church is starting to send their own missionaries out. That's really a cool thing. They're in that part, instead of being receiving nations, they're giving nations. Big difference. Instead of us sending money and people to those countries and them being receiving nations, they are starting to send their own indigenous people from their countries out into the world of mission. So that's pretty cool. Growing numbers of non-Western believers serving in other countries, which I just said. Countries changing from receiving to sending, and of course more practical hands-on training. Number two, leaders from traditionally poor countries are excelling. You know, here in the West, we like to lead the world. You know how that is. And we're pretty good at it. But you know what's happening in the world of Christianity, in the world of mission? Is that leaders in the developing countries are rising. They become known and they're becoming listened to. And that's a beautiful thing. That is a change in global trends and in world mission. It's actually a beautiful thing. Number three, social justice has become a global initiative, especially with young and young adults. For Christians, this will lead to increasing emphasis on meeting the physical needs, in addition to continuing the long-standing emphasis on evangelism. Just over the last 2 or 3 years, think of all the social justice programs that we're doing, all the human trafficking, all that thing. It's just risen to the top. So social justice around the world is a raising trend. Point number 4. Sorry for going so fast. And maybe I could email this presentation to the pastor, and you can go through it at another time, so forth. But number 4, growth of Islam and Christianity. It's amazing. Islam is growing at the same rate as Christianity. That's how it's going. But Islam is growing not by conversion, they're growing by birth rates. Whereas in Christianity, it's growing by salvation rates. So they're rising at the same amount. It's interesting, that global trend, what's happening. What are they saying? 10,000 people coming to faith in Christ in China alone every day in China is exploding. Huge country, 1.3 billion people. 10,000 a day is still a small number, but it is rising. It is rising. Number 5, destabilizing youth concentration. Do you think when you look at the news and you see these riots in Iraq and Iran, in Syria and in Gaza, in these countries, you know where you normally see their young people? And I don't want to say it's their fault. I want to say that in these urbanized areas, there's less for them to do. Education is dropping. They get involved in games and they get involved in groups. They want to be part of something. And they're also being recruited. That's another thing. If you find out with with the ISIS, with the Islamic State right now, they're recruiting. Look at the guy in Uganda or in Kenya. I forget his name now, but recruited child soldiers. I don't know how many people were killed here. Pardon me? Yes, huge. And they haven't caught him yet. And so there's a big push for youth to be involved in these things, and of course, militias and gangs and crime and so forth. Number 6, increase of women and children at risk. War creates poverty. War creates people having to move. Millions, more people are on the move now than ever in the history of mankind, are displaced. Well, when people are displaced, what happens? They become vulnerable. They come into these camps and they have to go by what camp leaders and whoever is running these, so they become very, very vulnerable. And that leads to conflict and migration, leads to human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and forced labor. Point number 7, technology moves forward to the edges. 7 years ago, I was in Cambodia. We were building orphanages in northern Cambodia. And of course, you know the story, the history of Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge. 6 million Cambodians were killed with swords, not with bullets. They didn't have enough money for bullets. They would bludgeon. They'd bring people in the village, take a mass grave, blindfold them, bludgeon them, throw them in. That's what happened. 6 million. It's the Khmer Rouge it was called. It was in the movie, you've heard it, the killing fields. But I was in Cambodia, and we were working on building some orphanages. We couldn't have a church at that time in Cambodia, but you could have an orphanage. So what they would do, they would put 100 kids in the orphanage. They would live upstairs, and the dining room and the meeting room about the size of this room was where the believers came in fellowship and worship to come and take care of the children different times during the week. So the orphanage was actually a church. But I remember in that country called technology, there was no electricity, of course. They just lanterns, kerosene lanterns and that, and generators. I'm standing with a 19-year-old young man who was the leader of this orphanage. And we were without our cell phones because we didn't need them, didn't have them. All of a sudden, a cell phone goes off. You kind of go, what was that? You're standing in the jungle, and a cell phone goes off. There's no electricity. You're like, what is this? And that 19-year-old takes his phone out and he goes, he was off in 30 seconds because it's expensive. I said, is that a cell phone? Yeah. She said, you have cell phones here? Yes. She says, we've never had electricity, but we have cell phones. And they have a cell phone network run by a generator, and they just charge it off the generator at night. So they never had telephone lines. They went from 0 to cell phone in that country. So when we talk about technology, now these little chips that come in your phones, we can give you the whole Bible, we can handle all the messages, we can handle all of that. The Jesus film, all of that. Little chips. There's 7.1 billion people in the world today. Our technology experts study this. Do you know how many cell phone registrations there are in the world today? 7.1 billion people. There's 7.2 billion cell phone registrations. Like, wait a minute, how can that be? Well, if you think of some of you who already had 2 or 3 cell phones, still registering your name and number. But anyway, this whole technology of cell phones and smartphones and all that. Just look at wars that have been won and lost from Twitter and from social media. It's how they start, it's how they end. It's amazing. Actually, when we were in Libya, I'll never forget it. A guy on our website that all the Libyans went to put on there. Why do you let this infidel ship come to our country? They're just a bunch of Christians. They're trying to evangelize us. They're trying to convert us. Get them out of the country. Miss Gaddafi did. It was amazing. We think she's a seeker, really. But they owned the cell phone company, of course. She went on and she texted everyone with a cell phone. She said, in effect, don't read what you believe. Come and see for yourself. That's what she texted out with. You know what, the next day, our lines got long and the people came and it was over. It was unbelievable. It was from technology. Just one text from a leader in the country said, come. The technology is huge. Three more left. Changing giving strategies. You know, the West is not giving as much. We Americans are not giving as much to missions as we did before. And what's happened, let's be honest, some of you have been on mission trips, you've been to different places. I've been all over Haiti and Cuba, many countries. But what happens is money goes to the country, and that's not always spent well. It's not always spent in the way they said it was going to be spent. So the West kind of gets a little leery about sending money, and that's happened. A, B, the economy has dropped. Things have changed in the United States. It's just different. So not as much money from the West. Global trend. What are we going to do about that? We need money to do missions. But there is more for individual and small businesses, is what's happening. So it's changed a little bit. So more people are different kinds of people are giving. The world is becoming a monoculture. What do we mean by that? I was in, my wife and I, Annika, we were the largest mall in Asia. We were in Tokyo just recently. It's the largest mall in Asia. There's huge malls. We walked through that mall and went to Taiwan. We're in Tokyo. We speak Japanese. Every store name in that whole mall, it went for miles and really got in a small part of it. All of it was in English. Every store name, Forever 21, Gap, Old Navy, they were all there. And it was unbelievable. And all the kids walking around with, New York Giants and the New York Jets, and they had all this American stuff on. It's a monoculture. They listen to the music, they see the tennis shoes on, they have the Nikes, you know what I mean? It's just